one for the service department and one for the health director. So
I would move approval for those also.
okay, so I would second those two items. Any discussion on those? Okay, all in favor of the two items, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carry, and that would adjourn our Board of Control. Thank you, Garrett.
Thank you. Thanks for waiting for me.
You got 2 more minutes. You're gonna have to do finance committee because Mike's not coming tonight.
You want me to do that?
No, but it's either Mike or for finance committee, it's Mike or Tracy. Tracy's gonna fill in.
Oh, yeah. No, Tracy can do it.
He's the co-chair.
Yeah.
Mike's not here.
That's rare.
Let me repeat that again, Heidi. Mike's not coming tonight.
Oh my God, is like this like his first time he hasn't been?
The guy's been out shoveling streets just like everybody else. And he said he's dead tired. He just can't make it.
Wow. Well, I have to say, he's got such a great attendance record that nobody will fault him.
Yep.
It could be worse. My son does plowing up in Munson area. Said he had about 22 inches. He's been plowing since 6 yesterday morning.
Hmm.
Oof.
What you get for living in them nice neighborhoods. He hasn't had electric in his house for 2 days either.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You got to redefine nice, but
Yeah, well, he bought a Generac.
All right, guys, it's 7 o'clock. I'm gonna call the Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020 committee meetings to order. The first thing on the agenda is under council or committee of the whole is the boards and commissions. Amy, would you go down the slate of applicants and get that in the record?
Yes, can everyone hear me?
yep.
Yes.
Okay, the first group we have for the Board of Zoning Appeals, we have 2 vacancies. Kim Sayre, who's a reappointment, and then 2 new applicants. Design and Preservation Committee, we actually have 2 vacancies and 1 application. Parks and Recreation Board, we have 2 vacancies and 4 new applicants. And actually, we have 1 additional reappointment. Kathleen Weiler has also applied for this for her reappointment. Planning Commission, we have 2 vacancies. Amanda Edwards has applied for reappointment, and then we have 3 new applicants. And Stormwater District Review, we have 2 vacancies with no applicants. And the Sustainability Commission, we have 2 vacancies. We actually have 0 applicants. Mr. Mazziato does not reside in Kent. He actually lives in Brimfield, unfortunately.
Okay, is there any questions? Not, we'll discuss that later in executive session. Moving on. That's it for committee of the whole. Land Use Committee, Mr. Ferrera.
Yes, we've got a proposed agreement with the Claben companies for the hike and bike trail. I'll turn that over to Jim Bowling.
Yeah, I think Jim is on. Actually, is he on, Jim?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, man, didn't see you.
You didn't want to miss us.
But this is an encouraging item. That's a corridor that you guys know our auto mile version there in West Main Street is just it's a challenge for pedestrian activity out there. And we're really pleased that Jim is working with the Claben family, the Claben company there, to be able to have an extra wide sidewalk that will essentially serve as a connector. So Jim just needs a little approval on an agreement to do that, and he's here to present that. Jim?
Thanks, Dave. I think you summed it up really well. The agreement just establishes how we can work together with Claben to add a 8-foot sidewalk that's 5 foot away from the road in an area where we don't have an easement. So the agreement will grant us an easement in that area, which will add a sidewalk in a location on West Main that doesn't have one right now. So we're been really happy with Claben, and we know this is the most effective way to get this done. So we're requesting your approval to execute the agreement on West Main Street.
Questions from council? I can't see, so speak up if you,
Heidi?
go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah. I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to ask it anyways. This seems like it would be an outlier. We do this one nice sidewalk and then what? I guess that's my question to Jim is this like sort of the beginning of what we would like to see on this corridor?
Yes, it is. We hope this is the first small step on what we'd like to see in there. And in the capital plan that you approved in November, we have, I believe it's in 2022, a study to look at how we can improve that corridor and what funding we can find to help improve that corridor. And this sort of sets the tone in that area. So we see this as a possibility of working on this as soon as we finish East Main Street.
Thank you.
Any further questions or from council? Anybody in the audience? Is there anyone in the audience? Back to council. What's your
Move to
pleasure?
authorize with
With the
emergency.
Emergency.
All right, that's Heidi approved, or made the motion, and Mr. Kuhar seconded. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. And opposed, say no. Motion passes. And that
Thank you.
will adjourn the land use committee.
Streets and sidewalks, Mr. Sidoti.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have a proposal for an Erie Street closure for the possibility of a community ice rink. And I think this is also Jim. I'm sure Dave will have some introductory remarks as usual.
Yeah, and this is one that, actually, we've been talking about a shared community ice rink with Kent State for a couple of years. It's not an easy thing to pull off. It's not a cheap thing to pull off, and location and many other things have just been challenging. So it didn't happen. And then this year, when COVID was still in the slightly friendlier stage, we talked to Joan about it, and she's like, well, if it's well managed and people are, controlled as far as the number of people on the rink, and everybody liked the location. So the idea originally started across the street on the Esplanade in the Great Lawn area there. But it turned out that actually, I think Jim gets credit for this one. Jim floated the idea, what if we closed Erie Street between the Parta building and the hotel? That might make some of the challenges that are facing us on the Great Lawn a little less of a problem. So everybody was like, that's a great idea. You could string lights, you could have music, you could do this, you could do that, and it gets people closer to downtown. The president of the university was a huge fan of it. We were delighted. I mean, even as COVID started to raise its head even uglier, the president didn't want to give it up. I really appreciate his passion to give the students in the community something to look forward to, something to do outdoors in the wintertime. But I have to say, all that preamble has now been preempted again. It's another victim of COVID. Given our current status, we really, even the president said, all right, I'll give. He called uncle after Joan called him up. I mean, Joan, he likes the idea of the ice rink just as much as anybody else, but it sends chills down her back to think about it in the current situation with the current rates of the contagion. So honestly, tonight, I don't have anything for you. I'd rather not ask you to pass something. If it comes back, if there's some slim hope that in February, somehow everything is better, we'll come back to you and revisit this, but I'm not optimistic. But in the end, I'm hoping we've learned a little bit, and maybe next winter we'll be able to do it, and Joan will have cured everybody by then. So you're off the hook tonight. That's just a little information for you, but there's no action item.
So Dave, am I hearing you say that we all love this idea, we all like the idea, we think it's a great idea, but we're going to postpone it, and hopefully in the future, we can work with Kent State to look at it once again? Is that kind of sums it up?
Perfect.
Yeah, that's all we have, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Finance Committee and Mr. DeLeon's absent. Ms. Wallach, you're going to be chairman tonight.
Okay, so we have public defender contract. Hope?
Go ahead, Hope.
Thank you, sir. This is our yearly contract with the Public Defender's Office. And last year, you allowed us to have $2,000 in our account for representing indigent defendants. We've spent zero. But there's always a possibility that we're going to need that. So I would ask council to allow us to enter into the agreement. We're going to go ahead and I think I told Dave I wanted $900, but I talked to Sandy and she said she would like to keep it at $2,000 for this year.
Okay, any questions from council? None? Any from the audience? If there's anybody out there? Back to council.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes. Next, we have the proposed 2021 operating budget.
So, all right, I guess I should start this one too, because obviously this is a different year than many. One, it's Rhonda's first budget with us. So we welcome Rhonda and we appreciate, Rhonda has actually made some changes even in her first go around. I don't think you'll notice them a whole lot, but I think behind the curtain, it's made things run smoother with the departments. And I was gonna email Dave Coffey and say, I think Rhonda got her budget draft done faster than he ever did. So, and this is her first year. So obviously she's the sort of steward of the process, but all the departments do a great job. I'm sure she would attest to that too. They are timely and quite honestly, they lived up to the 20% reduction. That's what we asked of everybody. And please know, Gwen asked me the other day, how would I describe the budget? And I feel like I meant to give her a 2-minute answer and it was probably 30 minutes. I don't know if I can say it quickly, but I'll try to do better tonight than I did with her. Here's the thing, right? Our budgets, those of you who've been here enough years, our budgets don't change a lot, right? I mean, we'll tweak something here or there, but for the most part, we've optimized it. You know, the Great Recession did a lot for us to really sharpen our pencils, tighten up areas where we knew the community was a priority. We focused there, maybe less priority, we started to back away. And so we shifted our resources. And for the most part, I feel like we've settled into a pretty good pattern. We obviously continue to listen to you. We listen to the community. Certain needs do change and we try to adjust to whether it's capital or all the way through to operating. And that would be true for this year's budget too. The only difference this year is the great unknown of 2021 and what COVID's going to bring. So normally, I even feel a little guilty. Usually Dave Coffey and I used to talk about when we start this budget, you know, it's in the middle of 2020 for 2021. And he always sort of gives himself a little leeway by saying, I can't forecast for sure what next year is going to bring. So don't hold me, too accountable for every last dime in terms of my projections. Well, this year it's just crazy. I mean, honestly, the unknown is the story of the budget. What I can tell you, the good news is we've ended up the year short of what we would like to have ended up, but because of all the additional funding that we've been able to secure, the CARES Act funding, various, FEMA funding, we hope, as we apply for that, there's been various allocations of the health department. Rhonda's done an exceptional job working with each of the departments to figure out how to make sure we spend every last penny of that outside money first, and then we spend our money next. That's sort of the strategy coming in. It's easy to do. She could tell you, and maybe she will tonight, we've spent more than we brought in, and that was our goal. We didn't want to have to turn any money back, right? I mean,
right.
And we shouldn't need to. God knows we have enough need financially out there. But what that's done for us, that's given us a little bit of a mask, or I don't know if that's the right way. You have to be careful when you look at that. Our numbers look better than they are because of that one-time money that came in. And I mean, it's even as unpredictable as what, Rhonda, last week, she called me up and she's like, I just got a check for $42,000 from somewhere. I don't know where it came from yet. I'm going to figure it out, but she thinks it's CARES money. That's kind of how this whole process has been. And we have Bureau of Workmen's Compensation has given us some great refunds that we didn't expect. All that stuff has helped us kind of stabilize this year. But we have no idea what to expect in those kind of supplemental dollars for next year. So we go back to, well, what are our income taxes doing? That's not a great story. We know Kent State just completed their rounds of buyouts this past year. The good news is those buyouts had a bunch of big cash payments during 2020, so that made our income taxes bump up a little bit, but those are gone next year. Those are not coming back. Those are people that have retired, moved on. And I don't know if it's good or bad. I saw in the paper today that Kent State's offering another round of buyouts to their faculty. So we got to watch that too. What we do know is that Kent State, they're roughly 35 to 40% of our total income tax on average. And they're going to be probably $500,000 less just from those buyouts that we know about. So we're going to start the year $500,000 short out of a $16 million income tax budget, roughly. So that's not chump change. But to make matters worse, Rita has done some forecasting for us. And there's a couple various sort of court cases and some legislation that's pending. If that doesn't go favorably, we could see as much as 2.2 million drop in income tax. That's a lot of money. I mean, I don't honestly know how we come out of that one other than get COVID cured, get people back to work, because that one is all about, there's a case of people want to pay their income taxes where they're working, even if they're working at home remotely. So all those Kent State folks that normally would be in the city of Kent working and were working remotely, some of their communities are now wanting their income taxes paid to them because they worked at home rather than in the city of Kent. So it hurts a community like ours. It would be good for a bedroom community that typically doesn't have that. And so that's a great variable that could really swing wildly. I mean, if it's 2 million, I don't know how we make that up quickly. The bottom line of all that, this is way longer again, I'm sorry. The bottom line is just remember this, it's very uncertain. So everything we built into this budget is sort of assuming the worst. And by that, I mean, we've taken a 20% cut. We continue to freeze different positions and hold vacancies as long as we can. So we're constraining our expenditures, and we're recommending anywhere we can to hold on to our cash. So things like City Hall, there's no reason not to proceed with City Hall, particularly given the low interest rates that we've talked about, historic low interest rates. But I would definitely recommend, our recommendation moving forward will continue to be save whatever cash we have because we don't know where we might need it next year. Whereas go ahead and borrow for that project or leverage any kind of borrowing money. This is probably something we're going to try to do. The goal is to keep our cash as fluid as possible because we don't know what's coming. We're still okay for another year. We're solvent, we're stable. We've got decent reserves that even if the big supplemental incomes don't appear in 2021 like they did in 2020, we have our own supplemental income that we can use for a while. It really depends on how deep that runs. So we've been good stewards. That's paying off. We'll continue to be hyper aggressive on any outside funding we can go after. And Rhonda's done, really an outstanding job. It's great. I mean, if you thought Dave Coffey was greedy, she's even greedier. She doesn't want to give up a penny. She's going after it. And it's great for the city. That's great, for the employees. Because keep in mind, and I reminded, we had a meeting with the union folks, and we were expressing our appreciation. This was the fire union appreciation, both for their service during COVID, obviously, but also for their willingness to defer the raises. So remember, our unions all agreed to do that, recognizing this uncertainty that I'm speaking about. So our employees have done what they can too. And this budget reflects that. I mean, it's hard to say you're proud of a budget that seems so austere, but given the uncertainty, I think it's about as good as we can put together. I mean, I know it is. It really is a solid document. It'll continue to allow us to live up to the objectives that you've sort of blessed and guided us in this direction, that direction. Those aren't changing, and we're just getting a little more creative in how we fund them. So maybe that was a little shorter than Gwen's explanation, but not much. I'll stop there. This is Rhonda's first, so she's kind of not sure how much detail you want tonight. She'll try to, I said, Dave Coffey usually gave a general overview, and then, you know, she could read the tea leaves, read your faces. If you're dozing off, she doesn't need to go into every detail sheet. But certainly, she's welcome questions from any of you, if rather than necessarily going through page by page, if there are certain areas that you would like to ask a question at some point, she's going to be open to that. So Rhonda, it's all yours.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the kind words. Dave Coffey actually told me that we went through this page by page, all 187 of them. Just kidding. So I'm going to share my screen.
Does Dave Coffey know that you're doing this at this hour as opposed to last? I'm just asking for a friend.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I said, does Dave Coffey know the order at which you're giving this? Because he always had to go last. And
Yeah, he did tell me that. I don't think let's see. Stop sharing. It's not the right thing. Hold on. Here we go. Okay, so you all received the budget book, and we did make a few changes this year whereby every department would prepare their budget, send it back to the finance department. We would enter it into another Excel spreadsheet and then try to put the whole thing together. What we did this year is we took the entire document and put it up onto a Google Drive, so that way every department head at their leisure could go into their worksheets and make changes as they saw fit. And then when everybody was done, we then exported that Google Drive doc, Google Doc back into Excel, and then we worked with it and, you know, still tweaked it and met with the departments. I think it made for a much smoother process. And my question, I guess, for all council going forward is, do you prefer that budget book, or would you prefer an Excel or a PDF document of the entire book, which I could give and send out to you after this meeting? And then you can just see which way you like it. And, you know, going forward in 2022, if you still want to receive a book, we can still do that. That being said, I'm going to start on the 2021 recommended budget overview, which it starts on page 1-1. Is that okay? So for the recommended budget, what we try to do for 2021, and this is pretty much the same as that's happened in the past, is we try to come up with our projections for the revenue. And the revenue is the base, obviously, of where we're going to get our money to make our expenditures. The biggest item you'll see is the income taxes. And as Dave mentioned earlier, yes, we're taking a cut. 2021's original budget was actually 16.7 million. We're expecting to receive about 16 million in 2020 here. So we reduced the budget dollars to a more actual account of that. And then we know that Kent State is already going to have a reduction. So we're showing the reduction to 15.5 million. Some of the other income tax areas like the JED, we did leave those the way they were for last year, only because we felt that, you know, we don't know what next year is going to project. And depending upon how maybe the first quarter goes, we can certainly come back and say that we want to reduce this, you know, if we want to choose that way. The property tax number, that comes from the county, so we don't really have any projections there. If you look at the usage charges for water and sewer, we took into consideration the 3% increase that council had approved last month. However, we're making also an assumption that consumption is going to be down. So the numbers for revenue for water sewer are actually only 1.5% of an increase. Down farther under the federal state section, you'll see that we have in the 2020 column, 2.261 million of the CARES Act. And then in 2021, there is nothing. So the 2020 CARES Act dollars, we have pretty much used it all. There are a few last minute expenditures going to be occurring this month to make sure that that does in fact occur. Some of the other items down below are grant dollars. You'll see that there are some lines that have zeros just because we are not sure what dollars we're going to get at this point, and those will be filled in obviously as we hear back. Going down farther under other local or other federal, state, local aid, those stayed the same from the 2020 budget. Those did not change. And then farther down, you'll notice that we have, we've actually included the $8 million of city, for the city administrative building up above. You know, you'll see it right underneath the AMATS amount. And then down below, the bond proceeds in the 2020, that actually had to do with the notes that rolled over, and we issued bonds for those in 2020. So you'll see that we're estimating about 50 million in revenues as compared to last year's 46.8. If you take out the debt, it's pretty close to being similar. You have to take out the reduction of the income tax dollars from last year. It's fairly comparable when you take out the debt numbers. So let me. And then here's the 2021 revenue budget categories by comparison. You'll notice that local government on down here, they're pretty flat of an increase. Other governmental aid is probably the increase due to the CARES Act. And then all other revenue, there's a slight increase, and that's it's pretty typical, I guess, for what we're looking at for 2021. And then if you look at page 1-3, this is the uses of the municipal income tax dollars. You know, we have the requirements of what goes into capital projects, what's being spent on the given to the new police station, which is the 0.25% out of the 2.25% income tax dollars. There's a requirement that 2/9 get put into the fire emergency and medical service fund, and then the income tax safety fund, which is basically the police department. The general fund does get the remaining portion after, of course, we make sure that all expenditures are paid out of the income tax fund for administrative costs and Rita's retainer. And then we also give the street construction maintenance repair. You'll see that last year for 2020, we had about 700,000. This year, we're looking at 600,000. And all of these numbers can change based on what happens with the income tax money. I am looking at changing how we allocate the income tax dollars instead of showing it all in Fund 116 and then allocating it throughout the year to the various funds. I'm looking at potentially allocating it on a monthly basis. And then here's the uses. You'll see that the pie chart, for the most part, looks the same from last year. This is a summary on 1-5 of the summary of comparison of major budget types. So these are all the different funds that the city has. And how much we're going to be spending for personal services, how much is operations and maintenance, how much is capital, debt payments, and any contingencies that we have. The contingencies, from my understanding, and you look down below, they haven't changed in over 10 years.
Rhonda, excuse me, would you like questions during the presentation, or would you?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm just kind of curious about, maybe I missed this, on the use of municipal income tax dollars under debt service for 2021, or there's nothing listed. Is that purposeful because we're not sure yet, or?
So there's truly not a real debt service fund. I think that was the special assessment fund. And that
Okay.
special assessment fund was paid off in 2020. That debt was paid off. And that's
Okay.
why it shows 0 in 2021.
So it's really not debt service that we're,
Yeah, this debt service fund is really the special assessment fund.
okay,
The remaining debt gets paid out of various funds, but mostly the capital project fund.
okay, thank
So
you.
you'll see later, if you actually look in your book at the very end on 9-1 and 2,
Yes,
where we show the debt, it'll show you exactly which fund is paying the debt. And I did include, which I can show at the end of this presentation, I can show where I estimated the 2021 bond that we're going to be doing for the administrative building.
okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else have any questions yet? Okay. So on the summary of comparison, I won't go through all of this, but you'll see this is on a fund by fund basis. What I'd like to have you look at is basically the totals here at the bottom for 2021. If you compare this personal services for 2021 to 2020, you'll know it's only a 0.6% increase. That's because our union contract negotiations, they all agreed to a 0% raise. However, our healthcare did increase slightly, as well as based on the union negotiations, we do have some step increases that are going to be required. So it's the increase for this line item is really those two items. So a couple step increases and then the healthcare insurance. Operations and maintenance, it did go down 6.4%. There are some expenditures that we could not reduce based on contractual items. There's certain things like when you enter into a contract for salt, you have to, you're bound to get so much in salt. When we use RETA, they have a 3% retainer. We are required to budget for that 3% retainer, even though we know that there's a good chance we're going to get a portion of it back as a refund the following year. So, I'd like to say that we did our best at trying to come up with a 20% reduction, but some cases it just wasn't feasible. And the capital, you'll notice that capital went down from 2020 to 2021, when in fact it really didn't. There's going to be some things that are going to be reappropriated because they got postponed from 20 to 2021. That's hard to say a lot of times, let me tell you, 2020 to 2021. The reserves and debt, this is the managed reserve care is right here. And then we have all the debt, which includes the Ohio Public Works Commission, OWDA loans that we have, and also any bonds that we currently have, plus additional bonds that we might be getting, which is basically the city administrative building. And that number is right within this number here. And then we have the couple TIFs. That number didn't change. It actually went down because of the fact we took the note and we bonded it out in 2020. So the debt payment for that went down. So then you'll see here that if you compare the 2021 to 2020, our total expenditures did go down from 54.9 million to 48.8 million. And then you can see the comparison of what makes up your personnel services, which is pretty flatlined. Operations and maintenance went down slightly. Capital did go down as well, as did other costs. So our total cost last year, you see up here around 55 million. Now we're at the 48. And then the last, this is 1-7, the program area comparisons for all the funds. These numbers, for the most part, will tie right directly to the tabs for basic utilities, public safety. However, they include on here some of the capital items that the other tabs in your book don't include. But this is showing you, 15 million for public safety is what we pay, 14.7 million for public utilities. General government went down because last year in 2020, we included the $7 million of capital for the City Hall administrative building right here, whereas that's not going to be included in this number because we're going to reappropriate that at the beginning of next year. But all the numbers, tend to pretty much stay the same. I know that leisure time activity did increase slightly because they did receive a grant for the Brady Leap section of the trail, and that's going to be included in the revenue, but it also has to be included in the expenditures. So that's the reason leisure time activity increased. Public utility increased based on, there's close to $5 million of capital projects in that area. And then, like I said, general government went down because of the City Hall. And then you'll see here, yes, sir.
Could you explain that again on the general government with the City Hall? So we appropriated $7 million in last year's budget.
In 2020 budget, we included a $7 million appropriation. So if we went down to the general government section, you would see that there is $7 million in the 2020 column. Nothing was spent,
right,
basically in 2020 yet. So that money will then be reappropriated in 2021 to carry the appropriation over, instead of me including it on this page again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, it does. Yes, it does.
So the $7 million will be added to so if you look at it this way, it's going to be, this should have been reduced by 7 million and this should have been increased by 7 million, or whatever the cost of the City Hall will come out to be.
Okay.
Okay.
So I have a question. This is Heidi.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you said it already and it just slipped past me, but why is the police facility so low? We actually paying it off? I mean,
that is
other years.
Okay, so the reason these years here were so high is the fact that we had that note payment. And so the note was 2.2 million, 2.4 million, something around there. But in 2020, remember, we issued bonds for those. So instead of paying off a complete note, which we would have to do, we would have to show it, report it that way as being paid off in full. And then we would then be getting proceeds for a lesser amount, okay? Now we're just, because we issued bonds, we showed the bond proceeds on our financial statements, but now it's got an amortization schedule over the next 10 years to show the payments of that. And that too is in the debt schedule, which I'll come to next.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely.
So to follow up on Heidi's, the interest that we pay on the notes for the police, the safety building,
Yes,
that's factored into the recommended budget here for the police facility.
correct. And I'll show you that next.
Okay, thank you.
And then you'll see the program area comparisons. Not much difference, except, public safety did take a little bit of a bigger chunk, as did basic utilities. And then all the other departments and other funds have kind of reduced. Okay. So let me bring you down to, if we go down to the debt service section here. And move you guys out of my way. Okay, so here's where the debt section is. Here's the issue 2 loans that we discussed and what fund they are being paid for from. And then your general obligation, this is the sewer note that went into bonds this year. And then you have the police safety, the police notes for the facility went into bonds. That's in here as well. And you'll see a little bit more detail right here. So these are what I added. Here's the 2021. This is the TIFs that went into a bond that now has a specific amortization schedule. Here's the safety center, 2.125 million. So instead of paying off 2,145,000 in 2021 and then getting proceeds of 2 million back and then having to pay 2 million off the following year, what we did is we went out for bonds and we got basically a mortgage. So now our payment for next year is 185,000 with 27,000 of interest. Remember, the interest was less than 2%. It was quite low. So now we have 3 debt issues here, long-term debt issues for the safety center. And then these 3 payments here, along with these 3 notes, is what you'll see in the fund. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And then we have all the other debt, which is the issue 2 and the OWDA loans. The issue 2 loans are interest-free, so those are awesome to have. It's just basically paying off an amount over a 20-year period. And then it shows you off to the right what fund is actually making those payments. Sorry. Is that my cue to be done? Does anybody else have any other questions?
What is OWDA?
I'm sorry?
What is
OWDA?
OWDA?
Okay. OWDA is the Ohio Water Development Agency, and
Right.
they're the ones that Jim Bowling tries to get loans from for a lot of the sewer projects that we do.
Any more questions from council? Any questions from the audience? Back to council.
Move to approve the budget.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks,
Opposed?
Rhonda. Nice job.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Nice job, Ron.
Very nice job.
Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have a budget appropriations amendment. Back to
Okay,
Rhonda.
Go ahead.
I'm off
Rob.
again. So, I actually gave you, I sent Mr. Roller a memo requesting council to approve the amendment to do a budget amendment and / cleanup of our 2020 budget. I don't have the amounts yet, but when you get the ordinance in the middle of the month on the 16th, you will definitely have the ordinance with all the amounts that we are going to have to adjust.
Questions from
With that,
council?
can council approve? If you have any questions, let me know.
Rhonda, I'm just kind of curious, when you say, this is just like general housekeeping at the end of the year, is that what we're talking about?
Correct. We're going to go through all the line items to make sure that if there's any negatives, we have to make sure that they're positive. So we have to potentially budget more money for that line item or move from one line item to another. The way the legal limit of control for the budgets is anything that's within operations and maintenance, we have the authority without you to just move from one line to another. Same with like all the capital items, we can move from one capital item to another. In the past, I did notice that that Mr. Coffey and all the department heads, when they had a change, say for example, if one project was $30,000 under budget, but another project needed $30,000, they would come to you and show you that $30,000 they were reducing this project and then wanted to increase this project. Technically, that's not required because the legal level of control would be just okay for me to go ahead and move that money. So it's really, I wanted to find out what your thought process was, because in 2021, I would like to be able to just move the money from one line to another we would still keep you abreast of all the total costs and what, everything would be, just not coming to you for approval for it.
Can I ask a follow-up, Tracy?
Yeah, go on.
So if I understand that correctly, basically, we have an expenditure within a cost center, let's say, and all you're saying is that we're not going to change the appropriations within that cost center. We may be moving from one expenditure to another.
Correct. Like
Okay.
I can't take from personal services and put it into capital or put it into operations and maintenance. I need your authority to do that.
Sure.
So that would definitely come from cabinet to council for approval. But if I needed to move money from salaries to benefits or, benefits to overtime or something to that effect, I can do that without council approval.
Okay.
I'm not
Thank you.
changing appropriations in total.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Do you,
Heidi?
yeah, do you need action on this?
Yes, because there is going to be an ordinance on the 16th of the month to do the cleanup of appropriations. And I just received some the past couple days of some additional grant money that we have to make sure that we have appropriated. So that will be forthcoming on the 16th.
So how would we structure such a motion?
Just approve, I guess, the budget amendments for the 2020 budget.
That's
Correct.
just moving it to council meeting. So moved. Approve the
We have
budget.
to go to the audience.
Second that.
Okay, sorry.
Hold on. Anybody from the audience? Okay, back to council.
I'll approve the budget amendments.
I'll
given to-
second whatever that was. Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Right, next. Hey, you're still up, Rhonda.
I know.
Then and now.
Okay, so the last item, this is something new that you haven't had. I sent Mr. Ruller a memo dated November 18th. In accordance with section 5705.41D of the Ohio Revised Code, the city must have approved through council the then and now certificates that exceed $3,000. So what that means is that somebody purchased something, went and got a purchase order for it afterwards, and it was in excess of $3,000. Those should be approved through council. So what I did is within the memo, I also included the list of purchase orders. We're trying to limit this from happening, but the then and now certificates enable us to I guess keep going with the purchase order process, and it's a better way, and I guess it gets us out of a citation from the state auditors as well.
Questions from council? Anybody in the audience? Back to council. What are you looking for here?
Move to approve the emergency.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay, next we have phone charging stations.
Yes, so actually this began back in the Harrison era. Before he left us, he had been working with Melanie. Melanie tends to be our point person for NOPEC. And she and Harrison had kind of been approached about an opportunity for these cellular charging stations. And I could have the sequencing wrong. Melanie, you can correct me, but I think Harrison filled out the paperwork just to put our name in the mix as potential recipient of a donated or free phone charging station that could be used in public places for the public to plug in and charge their cell phone. Now I will be honest enough to say it has NOPEC in big letters on it, so it is a bit of an advertisement for NOPEC, but we're members of NOPEC, so that's okay with us. And our thought was it probably would make a nice amenity in the city hall once we build that lobby area. Until then, I'm sure we can put it in some other lobby area, but that's like the extent of my knowledge and involvement. Melanie, you want to fill in the gaps?
Sure. Basically, that's exactly what took place. Back in February, this process became available to all NOPEC communities. We wanted an opportunity to be able to do that. Jim Bowling had assisted us with several public areas, everything from the Kent Free Library to PARTA. And we threw those all into the mix. We were awarded and granted it, but it kind of got dropped there as COVID kicked in, and then Harrison kind of left us, and it kind of got lost in the mix. And so they contacted us in November again. We re-erected it, and we need to just bring it to council to allow us to accept this. We're looking at temporarily placing it inside of the police station lobby area. And again, once the administration building is done, we really feel that that new lobby area will give us an opportunity to establish it there. And we do believe that we'll see more traffic in that administration building once we're open and COVID is gone.
Questions from council? Anybody in the audience? Back to council?
Wait,
Move to authorize.
no, go ahead.
Okay, Jerry, go on.
No, didn't we talk about this before, Melanie, and we really, at that time, didn't have a place to put it? Or was that in our NOPEC meeting that we had that one day?
That was in the NOPEC meeting that we had that one day. This actually took us all the way back to the beginning of the year. And honestly, this is where I got confused with it, because I thought this was the funding that we were receiving annually that we had messed up on, but it was actually that we had applied, received, and we had just not followed up on our paperwork.
All right. It seems to me that you're exactly right, but I thought we just didn't have a place to put it at that time. So, okay, I got it.
Anybody else? Okay, need a motion?
So moved with emergency.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
And then we have the 2021 position allocation.
Zan, do you want to introduce this? And I can't remember, do we usually talk first and then we go to exec session, or?
She's muted.
You're muted.
Mute yourself, Suzanne.
Thanks. This one, I think we do generally talk and vote public, and then just the general comp plan is in exec session. So really not a whole lot to talk about this year because we didn't do negotiations, and with the budget restrictions, there were no position allocation changes at all. The only real thing that you'll notice is we took the funding that used to be part of the position allocation, and Rhonda has placed it into the budget. So now the position allocation strictly covers the positions in the city.
And if I could add, in the budget books where we have allocated salaries to numerous areas, say where we're doing water, sewer, solid waste, and say income tax. We've done that in the budget book. So we were planning on our ordinance, not only in having you approve the budget, but also doing the allocation of the salaries based on where they are in the budget book.
Any questions from council? Anybody in the audience? Back to council.
Move to approve. Emergency.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, passes. And that's it.
At this time, we need a motion to go in executive session.
Yes, I'll move an executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code, paragraph 121.22, section G, item 1. Consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual, unless the public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual requests a public hearing.
Roll call.
Mr. Amrine,
Yes.
Mr. De Leon. Oh, no, Mr. De Leon. Mr.
Have
Farrar,
to be excused.
Yes, here.
Mr. Kuhar.
Yes.
Amy,
Yes.
did we get a second?
I was about to second that. We're excusing Mike DeLeo.
I was talking about.
No, back up. Go ahead, Hope. I know what you want.
I was talking about Jack's motion. Needed a second.
Right.
Second,
Second by Tracy. Thank you. Now I'll do your roll call.
Thank you, Hope. Ms. Rosenberg,
Here.
Ms. Schaefer Bish,
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti,
Here.
Mr. Turner,
Here.
and Ms. Wallach.
here, yes.
All are present except for Mr. De Leon.
Okay, Mr. DeLeon is not with us. Do we need a motion to excuse him?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. All right, everybody clear the room except what needs to be in executive session.